Rain hit the windshield in fat, uneven drops, and Imara Whitfield gripped the steering wheel like it owed her something. 9:30 at night. Atlanta traffic thinning out. In the rearview mirror, her son's face glowed pale under the passing streetlights, his cheek pressed to the window, breath fogging the glass in small, uneven puffs. "Malik, baby, you still with me?" "Mahat?" he mumbled. "My ear hurts." She reached back without looking, found his knee, squeezed it. "We're almost there. 10 minutes." She wasn't supposed to be driving him anywhere tonight. The sitter, Renata, had texted at 6:15. "So sorry. Family emergency. Can't make it." And by then, Imara was already 40 minutes outside Charlotte, coming off 4 hours of sitting across a conference table from investors who kept using words like scalability and asset light like they were casting spells. She'd had exactly one option: bring her son with her, drive straight through, and check into a room at the Solace on Peachtree, her own hotel. Not that anyone at the front desk would know that. That was the point. 3 years ago, when the Solace opened its 4th location, Imara made a decision that her business partner, Julian Cross, still needled her about at every quarterly meeting. She would not put her face on anything. No plaque in the lobby, no photo in the annual report. Regional staff knew her as the majority owner, a name on paperwork, sometimes a voice on a conference call. She showed up unannounced, dressed like nobody, and watched how her hotels treated people who looked like they didn't matter. She called it quality control. Julian called it playing dress-up with a 9-figure company. They were both a little right. Tonight she wasn't even doing it on purpose. She just needed a bed for her sick child, and it happened to be the closest Solace to the highway. The valet stand was empty when she pulled up. Gala night, apparently. Some hospitality industry awards dinner spilling gold light and string quartet music out through the lobby doors. She parked in the loading zone because Malik's fever made her stomach twist every time she thought too hard about it, hauled him onto her hip even though he was 9 and heavy, and told her he could walk, and pushed through the revolving door into air conditioning that smelled like lilies and rich people's perfume. The front desk clerk saw her before Imara reached the counter, and something in the girl's face changed. Not dramatically, just a small recalibration. The kind of look that took in the flannel pajama pants under Imara's coat, the scarf knotted over unbrushed hair, the boy sagging against her shoulder, and decided, in under 2 seconds, what category of guest this was. "Hi," Imara said, breathless. "I need a room. Just one night. My son's running a fever. Do you have a reservation?" The clerk's name tag read Priscilla. "No. I'm sorry. It's been I need whatever's available." Priscilla's eyes flicked to her monitor, then back to Imara, then briefly, past her shoulder toward the ballroom doors, where laughter rose and fell in waves. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. We're at full capacity tonight. We've got an event." "You don't have one room. Not one." Malik whimpered against her neck, and Imara felt the heat coming off his skin through her coat. "Okay, do you have a list of other hotels nearby? Anything close?" Priscilla hesitated, and in that hesitation, a man in a charcoal suit approached the counter beside them, rolling a garment bag, clearly a gala guest checking in late. "Evening," he said, cheerful, oblivious. "Cross, checking in. Should be under Hartwell Events." Priscilla's whole posture shifted. "Of course, Mr. Cross. One moment." Fingers already moving on the keyboard. Imara watched it happen, watched the ease of it, watched herself get pushed half a step back from the counter without anyone touching her. "Excuse me," she said. "I was here first." "I'll be right with you," Priscilla said, not looking up, already sliding a key card across the marble to the man in the suit, who thanked her and rolled away toward the elevators without a glance at the woman holding a feverish child 6 feet from him. Something cold moved through Imara's chest. Not shock, exactly. She'd built this company on knowing exactly how often this happened, in exactly this way, in hotels with exactly this lighting. Knowing it in theory, and standing inside it with her sick son on her hip, were 2 very different things. "I need to speak to your manager," Imara said. Cecilia Voss came out from the back office already talking, the particular brisk tone of someone who had decided the conversation before she heard a single word of it. She was maybe 40, hair pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt, a lanyard with a laminated badge reading Night Manager, swinging as she walked. "What seems to be the issue?" "I need a room," Imara said again, and hated how her voice was starting to shake, not from fear, but from the sheer exhaustion of having to say it a third time. "My son is sick. Your desk clerk told me you're full, but I just watched you check a man in without a reservation. Mr. Cross is on our VIP list for the Hartwell Gala. That room was held for him. I didn't ask about him specifically. I'm asking why there's nothing, anything, for a paying guest with a sick child." Cecilia's smile didn't move, but her eyes did a quick, clinical pass over Imara, the scarf, the flannel, the duffel bag with a broken zipper slung over one shoulder, and something in her decided, the same way it had decided for Priscilla, that this was a situation to be managed rather than solved. "I understand this is frustrating," Cecilia said, in the voice people use on children and drunk people, "but I have a ballroom full of industry guests tonight, and a duty to protect the guest experience for the event we're hosting. I can call you a car to the Marriott on Cortlandt. They should have availability. You want to send a 9-year-old with a fever of—" Imara pressed a hand to Malik's forehead, felt heat that scared her, "back out into the rain, to a different hotel, because I don't fit the vibe of your gala." "That is not what I said. It's what you did." A security guard had drifted closer during the exchange, hovering at the edge of the marble floor, badge reading Kendrick. No, Imara corrected herself even in the moment, squinting. Kendrick. He looked young, 24, 25, and uncomfortable in a way that suggested he'd seen this particular scene before and never liked it. "Ms. Voss," he said quietly, "we do have 412 open. Maintenance cleared it an hour ago." Cecilia's jaw tightened, a flash of something sharp crossing her face before she smoothed it. 412 is being held for a late arrival. It's not on the board as held. Kendrick. 2 syllables, a warning. He looked at Imara, then at the boy in her arms, then dropped his eyes to the floor and said nothing else. Imara watched him fold, watched the exact moment a person decided that keeping his job mattered more than a stranger's fever-hot child, and she couldn't even blame him for it. She recognized the math. She'd done that math herself once, a long time ago, in a much smaller life. "Fine," Imara said. Her voice had gone very quiet, very even, the tone she used in board meetings when she was about to say something people wouldn't like. "You're telling me there is no room in this hotel for me tonight?" "I'm telling you we're at capacity for walk-ins," Cecilia said. "It's policy." "Whose policy?" "Corporates. We've had to tighten walk-in acceptance this quarter. Occupancy targets." Cecilia said it like a shield, like the word corporate absolved her of the last 5 minutes entirely. Imara almost laughed. She knew exactly whose policy that was. She'd been in the room 3 months ago when Julian pushed through a walk-in restriction across the portfolio, dressed up in language about optimizing yield management and protecting brand experience during high-value bookings. She'd pushed back. He'd said, "Trust me, Imara, the data supports this." She hadn't asked what the data didn't say, who got waved through anyway, and who got the door. Now she knew. "Ma'am, I really do need you to step aside," Cecilia said, glancing toward the ballroom, where 2 more gala guests were drifting toward the desk. "You're welcome to use our lobby restroom, but I can't have you loitering during a private event." Loitering. Malik stirred against her shoulder, coughed a small, wet cough, and mumbled, "Mama, can we go home?" And that was the moment something in Imara went very still and very clear, the way water goes still right before it turns to ice. She could end this in 11 words. "I own this hotel. I own the company. Give me a key." She had done it before, once, at a Solace in Nashville, when a manager refused to seat a black bride's family in the restaurant during a wedding block. She'd walked to the host stand, pulled out the ownership documents on her phone, and watched the manager's face collapse in real time. It had felt like justice for about 4 minutes, and then it had felt like nothing, because the manager kept his job with an apology and a write-up, and Imara had gone home wondering how many other nights like that happened when she wasn't standing there to catch it. She didn't want to end this with a phone screen and a gotcha. Not yet. She wanted to see how far it went. "Fine," she said again, and picked up her duffel bag and turned Malik's weight more securely onto her hip. "We'll go." Cecilia's shoulders dropped half an inch, relief plain on her face. "I really am sorry for the inconvenience." Imara didn't answer. She walked back out through the revolving door, into rain that had gone from a drizzle to something harder, something that soaked through her scarf in the 15 steps to her car, and she buckled Malik into the back seat, with hands that weren't quite steady. She sat behind the wheel for a long moment without starting the engine, watching the lobby glow gold through the windshield, watching shapes in evening wear move past the glass, like a show being performed for people who would never be told no. Then she picked up her phone and typed a single text to her assistant, Abena, who was 3 hours away and probably asleep. "I need everything on tonight's front desk and management staff at the Peachtree property. And pull the walk-in policy memo Julian pushed through in April. I want the exact language." She hesitated, thumb hovering, and added one more line before she set the phone down and finally started the car. "Also, find me the nearest urgent care. Malik's fever's not breaking." Behind her, in the mirror, her son's eyes were closed, his lips moving faintly around words she couldn't hear. She reached back again, found his hand this time instead of his knee, and held onto it the whole way out of the parking lot, the hotel's lit windows shrinking in her rearview mirror like something she was leaving behind on purpose. She wasn't finished with that building, not even close. But right now, she had a son who needed a doctor, and everything else, the policy, the manager, the desk clerk, the quiet security guard who knew better and said nothing, all of it could wait until morning. It would still be there. She'd make sure of it. Grady Urgent Care smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee, and the fluorescent lights made everyone under them look a little bit dead. Imara sat in a plastic chair with Malik's head in her lap, stroking his hair back from his damp forehead, watching a muted television loop weather forecasts nobody in the room was paying attention to. "Whitfield, Malik?" a nurse called. The exam room was small and cold. A young resident checked his ears, his throat, pressed gentle fingers along his jaw. "Looks like an ear infection. Probably viral on top of it. Fever's 102.4. We'll get him something to bring that down, and start him on antibiotics, in case it's bacterial. He's going to be okay, Mom. Just a rough couple of days." Mom, not ma'am, not a name on a screen. Just a plain, unremarkable kindness that made Imara's throat tighten more than the entire scene at the hotel had. "Thank you," she said, and meant it more than the words could carry. By 11:40, Malik was sleeping in the back seat again, breathing easier, a paper bag of medication on the passenger seat beside her. Imara sat in the parking lot under a sodium light, engine idling, and finally let herself feel the day in full. The pitch meeting, the sitter canceling, the drive, the lobby, the rain. And for about 90 seconds, she put her forehead against the steering wheel and just breathed. Then her phone buzzed. Abena. Got the staff list. Priscilla Yates, 8 months, night shift, decent reviews, 1 prior complaint. Unrelated. Guest parking dispute. Cecilia Voss, night manager, 3 years, aggressive on occupancy metrics, 2 commendations from regional for meeting Q1, Q2 targets. Also, found the memo. It's worse than you think. Imara sat up. Send it. The document loaded slow on her phone's cracked screen. 3 pages of corporate language Julian had clearly had someone polish before it went out. Buried in paragraph 4, past the talk about yield optimization and brand-tier guest prioritization, was the line that made her stomach drop. Walk-in guests without confirmed loyalty tier status or event affiliation should be directed to overflow accommodations where property occupancy exceeds 85% during high-value bookings, in order to preserve inventory for premium and VIP segments. No mention of race. Of course there wasn't. Julian was many things, but he wasn't stupid enough to put that in writing. The policy was neutral on paper and had been for exactly as long as it took someone like Cecilia Voss to apply it selectively, waving through a man in a Hartwell gala suit while turning away a woman in flannel pajama pants holding a sick child, because one of them looked like premium inventory and the other did not. That was the part that made Amara's hands go cold on the wheel. It wasn't one bad employee having a bad night. It was a system, built vague enough to give cover to whoever's judgment filled in the blanks, and the blanks kept getting filled in the same direction, hotel after hotel, city after city, and nobody upstairs ever had to see it happen. She thought about calling Julian right then, at midnight, and decided against it. She wanted the full picture first. She wanted to know exactly how deep this went, before she brought it to the person who'd built the loophole in the first place. One more thing, Abena texted. Cecilia posted something on her personal Instagram 40 minutes ago. Story, not a post. Screenshots itself, but a follower sent it to guest relations because it referenced the property by name. What did it say? Kept the riffraff out of the Hartwell gala tonight, lol. The things we do for these VIPs. 14 views before she took it down. Guest relations flagged it automatically because of the hashtag. Aymara read it twice. There it was. Not corporate language now. Not brand tier prioritization. Just the plain, ugly shape of what had actually happened, typed out by the woman who'd done it, thinking no one who mattered would ever see it. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt tired in a new way, a heavier way, the particular exhaustion of having a suspicion confirmed instead of disproven. She didn't go back to the hotel that night. Malik needed rest more than she needed a confrontation, and confrontations built on adrenaline tended to go worse than ones built on sleep. She drove them to a Hampton Inn 2 exits down. Not one of hers. A small mercy in that there was nothing to untangle about ownership. Checked in under her legal name without incident, and lay awake next to her sleeping son until nearly 2 in the morning, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, running the evening back and forth like tape. She kept landing on Kendrick. The security guard who'd known 412 was open, who'd said so out loud, and who'd folded the second Cecilia used his name like a leash. She understood it. She'd been a 24-year-old with rent due once too. But understanding it and excusing it weren't the same thing, and she wanted to know more about him before she decided which one applied. At 6 a.m., Malik's fever had dropped to 99.8. He ate half a piece of toast and fell back asleep in the car on the way to his father's place. Desmond had agreed, grudgingly, over a clipped phone call, to take him for the day since Amara had clearly overextended herself again, dragging him around at midnight like that. She let the comment sit without answering it. Desmond had been building a file on her for the custody modification hearing next month. Unstable schedule, prioritizes work, unreliable childcare arrangements, and she knew arguing with him in the driveway at 7 in the morning would only hand him another data point. She dropped Malik off, watched him shuffle inside in his father's oversized hoodie, and sat in the driveway a moment longer than she needed to, feeling the specific loneliness of doing everything right and still being treated like she'd done something wrong. Then she drove to the office and called Abena in for a 9 a.m. meeting, coffee in hand, dressed now the way the world expected an owner to dress. Blazer, low bun, the version of herself that made people at front desks stand up straighter without her saying a word. "I want everything by end of day," she said. "Every property, all 31, walk-in denial rates, broken down by whatever demographic data we can pull, from booking photos and names without crossing a legal line. I want to know if last night was one bad manager or a pattern with a policy hiding behind it." Abena, who'd worked with her for 6 years and knew when to push back and when not to, only asked one question: "Are we going in soft on this or public?" Aymara thought about Cecilia's Instagram story. 14 views, and one of them had cared enough to send it up the chain. "We're going inaccurate," she said. "Then we decide how loud it needs to be." By 2 p.m., the picture Abena built was worse than a single bad night. Across the portfolio, walk-in denial rates for guests without a stated loyalty tier were nearly double for guests whose booking names or ID photos suggested they were black, even accounting for occupancy load. It wasn't a smoking gun in any single hotel. It was a smoking gun in the aggregate, the kind of pattern that didn't happen by accident, that happened because a vague policy gave managers permission to trust their gut, and too many guts had the same bias baked in. She sat with the spreadsheet for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and called Julian. He answered on the second ring, breezy, mid-golf swing energy even over the phone. "Imara, to what do I owe your walk-in policy?" she said. "The one from April. I need you in my office in 20 minutes. A pause. "That bad a mood, huh?" "Julian, 20 minutes. She hung up before he could turn it into a joke, and looked at the spreadsheet glowing on her screen, and thought about her son's fever-hot forehead under her palm in a lobby smelling like lilies, and about Cecilia's smile that hadn't moved even once through the whole exchange, and about Kendrick's eyes dropping to the floor. Tomorrow morning, she was going back to that hotel, not as a guest this time. She picked up her phone one more time and texted Abena a single line. "Book the regional GM and the Peachtree Properties full leadership team for a 9 a.m. meeting tomorrow. Don't tell them why." Then she sat back, and for the first time since the rain-soaked parking lot the night before, allowed herself something close to a smile. Thin, tired, and entirely without warmth. The solace on Peachtree looked different by daylight. The gala decor gone, the ballroom stripped back to its ordinary marble hush, sunlight instead of gold light pouring through the tall front windows. Imara walked in at 8:50 a.m. in the blazer, the low bun, low heels that made no sound on the floor. Abena a half-step behind her, with a tablet under her arm. Priscilla was behind the desk again, day shift overlap, and she looked up automatically, the customer service smile already half-formed, and then faltered, some flicker of recognition crossing her face without quite landing anywhere. She didn't know why the woman in the blazer looked familiar, she just knew that she did. "Good morning," Imara said. "I'm here to see Cecilia Voss, and I understand there's a leadership meeting scheduled." Cecilia came around the corner from the office at 9 on the dot, expecting the regional GM, a man named Barrett she'd worked with for years, and instead found a woman standing in the lobby who took a full 3 seconds to place. Flannel pajamas swapped for tailored wool, scarf gone, hair different, but the eyes were the eyes, and the moment it clicked, Imara watched the exact same collapse she'd once seen in Nashville. The color left Cecilia's face like someone had pulled a plug. "You're," Cecilia started. "Imara Whitfield, majority owner, Solace Hospitality Group." She said it flat, no theater in it, because the theater wasn't the point. "We met last night. You told me you didn't have a room." "I didn't. I had no idea who you—" "That's exactly the problem," Imara said. "You shouldn't have needed to know who I was to treat me like a person who deserved a room in a hotel with 312 empty units that night. Room 412 was open. Your own security officer told you that, and you overruled him because a man in a nicer suit walked in behind me." Barrett, the regional GM, arrived a minute later, visibly confused by the tension already thick in the lobby, and Imara didn't wait for him to catch up. She'd learned a long time ago that explaining herself twice only diluted the point. "I'm going to say this once, to everyone here, so there's no confusion afterward," she said, loud enough to carry to the desk, to the office doorway, to Kendrick, who'd just come off a night shift and was lingering by the employee entrance with his jacket half on, frozen mid-motion. "Last night, my son had 102 fever. I stood at that desk and asked for a room, and I was told there were none, while a man with an event affiliation was checked in without a reservation 4 feet away from me. When your security officer pointed out an open room, he was shut down by name, in front of me, and I watched him back off, because he was afraid of losing his job for telling the truth." Cecilia opened her mouth. Imara held up a hand, not unkindly, but firmly enough that it closed again. "I've spent the last 12 hours finding out that wasn't an isolated bad night. It's a pattern, across this company, hiding behind a walk-in policy that never once mentions race, but somehow only seems to bite one kind of guest. That policy came from my business partner. I own part of that failure. I'm not standing here pretending I don't. Barrett shifted, uneasy, sensing the ground under his own feet was less solid than it had been 90 seconds ago. Cecilia, Amara continued, you didn't just enforce a bad policy last night. You lied to a guest's face about capacity, overruled a staff member who told you the truth, and then posted about it on social media, calling a mother and her sick child riffraff for 14 people to see before you deleted it. That's not a policy problem. That's a character problem, and I don't build a company around people who think that's funny at midnight. You're terminated, effective now. HR will process it today. Cecilia's mouth worked, no sound coming out for a moment, and then, you can't just, I've been here 3 years. I've hit every occupancy target, you people. You people, Imara repeated, very quietly, and let the phrase sit in the air until Cecilia heard herself say it. Nobody spoke. Somewhere behind the desk, Priscilla had gone very still, hand halfway to a stack of checkout folios, watching. Priscilla, Amara said, turning, and watched the younger woman brace, like she was expecting the same sentence. You denied me a room on Cecilia's direction, after she overruled the truth in front of you. That doesn't make you innocent. It makes you someone who went along with something you probably knew was wrong, because you needed the job more than you needed to argue with your manager at 10 o'clock at night. I understand that math. I've done that math myself, a long time ago, in a much smaller life than this one. Priscilla's eyes were wet, but she didn't look away. You're not fired, Imara said. You're on a written warning, and you're going through the same guest equity retraining every front desk employee at every property is about to go through, starting this month, because clearly the version we had wasn't working. If I see this pattern again with your name attached to it, that will be a different conversation. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Barely above a whisper, Imara turned to Kendrick last, who still hadn't taken his jacket off, standing in the doorway like a man trying to decide whether he was about to be swept up in the same wreckage. You told the truth, she said, in front of your manager, knowing it might cost you something. That's rarer than people think. She glanced at Abena, who was already typing. Effective today, you're being moved to guest relations, with a raise that reflects it. I need people on my floor who'll say the true thing out loud, even when it's inconvenient. That's not a small skill. Don't let this job train it out of you. Kendrick's jaw worked, and he managed only, thank you, I don't thank you, before he had to look at the floor again, this time for a different reason. Barrett cleared his throat. Ms. Whitfield, I want to say, on behalf of— Save it, Imara said, not unkindly. I need you and every regional manager in a room with Julian and me by Thursday. The walk-in policy is dead as of this morning, portfolio-wide. We're rebuilding it with actual guardrails this time, not vague language that lets people fill in the ugly parts themselves. I'll send the details. She picked up her bag and for a moment stood in the lobby that had turned her away 11 hours earlier. Sunlight now pouring gold-white across the same marble that had glowed amber under gala lighting the night before, and felt something in her chest loosen that had been clenched since the moment Cecilia said the word loitering. It wasn't triumph exactly. It was closer to relief, the specific relief of watching a thing get named correctly out loud, in front of the people who needed to hear it named. 3 weeks later, Imara sat across a mediation table from Desmond and his lawyer, a folder in front of her that she hadn't planned on needing, but was glad, now, to have. She dragged our son around at midnight, Desmond was saying, to the mediator more than to her, sick, in the rain, instead of just, I was denied a hotel room while my child had a fever, Imara said evenly. I have documentation of the incident, the resolution, and the corporate policy overhaul that came out of it. I also have a pediatric urgent care record, showing he was seen within the hour, treated, and recovered within 3 days. She slid the folder across. I'd rather you read this than assume it. Desmond read it. His jaw tightened somewhere around the 3rd page, the part where Cecilia's termination letter was attached. The part where the portfolio-wide policy change was dated the same week. And when he looked up, some of the certainty had gone out of his face. "You handled that," he said. "Not quite a question." "I handled a lot of things that night," Imara said. Being his mother was one of them. It didn't stop being true just because the hotel made it harder than it needed to be. The mediator made a note. Desmond didn't argue the point again. Malik was back to full health within the week, back to arguing about bedtime and leaving cereal bowls in the sink, and asking, with the specific bluntness of a 9-year-old, why the lady at the hotel had been so mean to them. "Some people decide who you are before they know anything about you," Imara told him one evening, sitting on the edge of his bed, the lamp casting a warm circle over the quilt. "They look at how tired you seem, or what you're wearing, or the color of your skin, and they make up a whole story about you in about 2 seconds. Most of the time, they never find out how wrong they were. But you fired her." "I did. But firing her doesn't fix the 2 seconds. It just makes sure fewer people have to live through what we lived through that night. That's the part that actually matters. Not getting even. Making it smaller for the next person." Malik considered this with the seriousness only children bring to bedtime conversations. "Are you going to check all your hotels now? Like sneaky, so they don't know it's you?" Imara smiled, thinking of Kendrick at the guest relations desk now. Thinking of Priscilla's letter, an actual letter, handwritten, apologizing and asking to be part of the retraining rollout as a trainer herself, an offer Imara had accepted. Thinking of Julian, chastened for the first time in 6 years of partnership, agreeing to guardrails he'd have laughed off a month earlier. "Sneaky as ever," she said, and turned off the lamp. "But I've got help now. People who'll tell the truth, even when it costs them something. That matters more than me showing up in disguise." She sat a moment longer in the dark, listening to her son's breathing even out into sleep, and thought about the woman in flannel pajamas standing at a marble counter, asking for nothing more than a room for one night, and being told there wasn't one. There was always a room. The only question, she'd learned, was whether the people holding the keys could see past their own assumptions long enough to hand it over. She intended to build a company that didn't have to be taught that twice.